Sound good? I'll be back. All right, kid. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of Digital Voices. My name is Bo Tiffany. Today, my special guest is Kameron Shembeda. I'm really good friends with his mom. Kameron has been through the ringer. He has experienced some of our healthcare's best and finest and some of its worst. He's had a struggle with some seizures and had to have some surgeries to take care of that. Currently has been struggling to get onto SSI due to all the coronavirus and the issues with even getting SSI. He's been struggling since 2018, even though he has seizures on a daily basis. So, I want to thank you for being on our podcast, Kameron. How you doing?
Living it.
Living it, brother. So, what's on your mind? That's what we talk about here. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? I know usually you got lots to say. What topic you want to start out with first?
I don't know. You started out. I'll just continue it.
All right. Well, how about you're sick of hearing about people talk about the coronavirus, and are you for the lockdown or against the lockdown? Having had some recent surgeries, obviously you're probably more at risk if you were to get infected, and so complication wise, you're trying to isolate, and you've actually been isolating for how long now?
I've been in my house for a while, but I mean,
how long?
Lockdowns.
How long's a while? 7 weeks, 8
chill
weeks.
Out for pretty much since it started. I don't hang out with.
Okay. So
anyone.
since the bars closed, were you going out to the bars until they closed?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So since they closed, which I think was the 18th of March, because they closed it on my birthday. So I remember that clearly. I can't forget that date.
Yeah, I party pretty hard.
Well, it's the DNA for the Shembada.
Yeah,
the Shembadas like to party. And you're a Wisconsinite, so yeah, I think we can forgive you.
Yeah, basically that adds to it.
In Wisconsin, we're born to drink milk and beer, and perhaps a little whiskey.
Jeez.
Depends on if it gets you to go to sleep or not. Yeah. So you've been in lockdown for quite a few weeks. I think it's probably going 7 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. What have you been doing? You've been doing a lot of online surfing. You've been what's your life entail?
I mean, just chilling. I mean, seeing what's up online. I mean, people. I mean, I guess people don't really take it serious. I mean, you can go to the store, and it's funny. I mean, you see people with masks on. They don't listen to what's in the store, though. So, I mean, what's the point? I mean, I guess you can just get rid of the lockdown. Because you have the directions in the store, but yet the people with the masks on don't follow directions. Well,
and they do. I mean, so there are some options for people that are looking to follow and adhere to things. One of the things that I was pleasantly surprised to find was Walmart's online ordering. So you can grocery shop online. They pick it for you, and then you just go and pick it up. And they load it for you and they send you on your way. They don't talk to you hardly at all. It's quick, painless, and barely any contamination. Now, in your particular circumstance, you're without a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So when you travel, how are you traveling? And because you're using public transportation, does that worry you because you're a little more at risk?
I just have people that I know that don't hang out with a bunch of people, pick me up, friends, and family.
Okay. And how has this affected like medical care for you? Are you still making all of your appointments? Have they pushed them back?
I every appointment that I had scheduled got pretty much canceled.
Has it been rescheduled as of yet, or are you just kind of hanging in limbo?
I just canceled them. They called me, they pushed them back, so I just ended up canceling them. There's no point to keep getting phone calls saying, "Can you please reschedule your appointment?" It kind of gets annoying.
Well, I know in my particular circumstance, like I have neck injections, back injections, SI joints from my accident, and I'm well overdue for those. So I also have been stuck in that loop of having to push things back. But because it's not, our healthcare isn't built where we can just call today and we're in tomorrow. You know, some of these doctors, depending on if they're specialists or general practitioners, can take, you know, a couple months or more to get to actually see. So I would encourage you to keep yourself in the loop so that you don't have any unneeded delays in treatment, especially in your particular case. How are you healing up?
Yeah.
How are you healing up, by the way?
Everything's good. I definitely would want to have a seizure again since my shoulder pops out every time. I definitely would pop it in. Well, since I don't know how I would pop it in by myself because it's not very fun, but I definitely wouldn't want to go to the hospital right now.
What is your condition? Why don't you fill our podcast listeners in? What is it that you? I mean, so you have epilepsy, but
severe epilepsy.
Okay. Was it caused from an accident? Genetic?
They think it was caused from getting hit with a baseball bat to the skull.
Okay, so you had
from one of my friends who was younger. I probably got hit with it when I was about 5, and he accidentally hit me when he was trying to hit a ball, and he hit me across the skull.
Okay. Wow. So obviously that's life altering and changing. You obviously, especially when you were younger, you were getting seizures quite often. You said on a daily basis, correct?
Roughly. It got really bad in 8th grade. That was when it started daily.
With seizures, for our listeners, they can cause some brain damage, correct? If you have severe ones, especially multiples.
I'm pretty sure, yes. I mean, I don't really.
So it was imperative that obviously that you got that rectified. Medication doesn't. Just again for our listeners.
Yeah, my meds don't really work. I've had surgery now. I've still had a couple cents of surgery. I mean,
you went through the ringer just to try to get this under control. Yeah, you kind of went through the ringer to get this under control.
I mean, I take 3 meds right now,
which obviously have side effects too. Most obviously medications do, but the procedure that you just had was a surgery where they inserted a lead to your brain. Is that correct? And so
it looks like a pacemaker, and then a wire leads to a nerve in my neck.
Okay. And
then it
what's that
sends electricity to my brain every 5 minutes.
What's that procedure called?
It's a vagus nerve stimulator.
A vagus nerve stimulator?
Vagus.
Oh, a Vegas, like you're rolling dice. Okay. So now, before you had that done, even with medications, you were experiencing seizures how often?
At least once, or it was probably a couple of times a month.
Okay. Now you've had this implant in for a while. I know that they had to adjust it. So you had a second surgery for them to adjust it. And now they finally got it working. Since they've activated that, have you had any seizures?
I had one before Thanksgiving, which popped my shoulder out.
Okay. And obviously real severe at that point. Now,
every time I have a seizure now, it pops my shoulder out.
So, question for you. I know that you have a device that you can wave in front of your chest that will activate because you can sometimes feel these seizures coming on, correct?
Yeah.
And when you feel them, what's that feel like to you?
feels like I guess the best way to describe it is kind of like an out of body experience. Like it kind of feels like I'm just out of my body and I'm looking at myself in the room spinning.
So are you literally being okay?
Like it feels like I'm literally looking at myself in the room spinning.
Okay. So I have to dig into that.
That's hard to like. There is no way you would know what that is like unless you were me.
Are you able to literally,
or anybody else with epilepsy?
Are you able to literally see yourself per se?
No, it just,
okay.
That's just the best way to describe it.
Okay. I just was curious. I mean, so you've heard about out of body experiences, especially like near death.
Yeah, but it's just like it's not like the room spinning, different. But it's like no, it's just like it's not like the room spinning because you know how like you feel like the room spinning, but it's
right. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. Yeah, that vertigo. Yeah, kind of just. I don't know if you've ever been seasick. Is it similar to that, where you kind of get the spins, or like when you're really drunk, when you get really, when you hit that point when you're super intoxicated and you get the spins?
It's not like that.
All right, so a different kind of spinning room. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. I always wanted to know what epilepsy was like.
I've never been able to describe it to my doctor either.
Yeah, no, and it's okay. It's just
some people get a metallic taste
in their mouth. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of people get different things.
I had a fiance that I was engaged to in my early 20s, and her brother passed away shortly before her and I got together. Actually, maybe it wasn't that short. I think it was probably 8 years or something like that. But anyways, he had suffered from epilepsy and had a horrible passing. And so I know a lot more about that particular, do they call it a disease, or is it it's not a disease because it's something that you obviously got in trauma from the baseball bat. So is it just an injury? Is that what they consider it? Or is it maybe like is it a nerve?
I don't really know what you call it. I guess a disease, I think they call it.
Okay. Just curious if it was like nerves or just some connections in the brain that aren't
disorder.
Yeah.
I would say they call it.
Okay. So obviously it changed your life. And this happened in how old were you? Is it 8th grade?
I was like 6, they decided, and then it started in 4th grade.
Okay. So how long
my
after
teachers
how long after the accident with the baseball bat that you developed the symptoms?
Well, 4th grade, teachers kept trying to say that I had ADD.
Okay.
But my mom said that he does not have ADD. Then all of a sudden one day, my face just smashed into the desk, and then the teacher took me out in the hallway. Then I all of a sudden woke up in the hospital, and they said I had epilepsy. And then the next time I had a seizure was in, what was it? I think it was 6th grade, and then it really picked up in 8th grade. I was having seizures every day, and then finally they sent me to my neurologist again that I saw in 4th grade, and he put me on one of the meds I take now, and then he put me on another one that I take now, and then finally put me on another. But after that, he finally decided to have the surgery that I had because I started crashing cars.
Well, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, well, that's never a good thing. Especially with epilepsy.
He said once you're about on 3 meds, that's about the end of the road, and you need to look at a different option.
Right. Well, at least he was keeping it real with you.
Well, yeah, he said once you hit 3 meds and you're on a lot, like at the highest dose, that you got to look at something else.
Right. Well, again, for our listeners, so epilepsy is a seizure disorder, which is what we've been talking about. It's something that comes on, pretty instantly, right? I mean, you might have a little precursor with the room spinning and kind of an out-of-body experience as it's coming on. But between the start of that feeling and the actual events of the seizure, how long of a time frame are we talking? I mean, if you were to feel like can you pull over and you're safe, have your seizure, and then go upon your way, or it could just happen at any time?
It can be between instant. You can have 10 seconds, 30 seconds, because I've had all of a sudden I say, hey, and I just drop, or I've had where I pulled over, put it in park. I've had my buddy, and I told him, hey, I got to go talk to you. We walked to an aisle at Walmart, and I made a joke to him, and I dropped. So it can just be random, and I know. So it can be within 10 to 30 seconds.
And so just for our listeners, if you're diagnosed with epilepsy and you have a seizure, they yank your license, don't they?
Depends what state you live in. A lot of states are more strict. Wisconsin, it's usually, in Wisconsin, it is 3 months. But if you only go to the hospital, they don't know. But if your doctor knows, yes, he'll send something. Well, usually he'll send something to the DMV and say, hey, we're taking
so without
your
putting yourself on the line like you are, what you're saying is that if it's diagnosed...
Well, right now, my license is suspended. Yeah, my license is suspended. It's been suspended for like 6 months.
Diagnosed events of seizures will yank your license. The doctor will have to report that, and they take your license for 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah, I've been suspended for about 6 months now. And that's because I've had back-to-back seizures.
Well, with your last one being in Thanksgiving time, right?
Yeah, so I should be good now, but I got to take a form to him.
Right. No, I understand.
I just haven't gone to him because I don't got time for that with what's going around.
So someone that is an adult that has their license taken, and you're struggling to even get on SSI, so that doesn't give you a lot of options. I know that you are living on your own. Fortunately, Sheboygan, the small area in Sheboygan where you're located,
that's a fun argument online.
The rent around this area is a lot cheaper than most anywhere else in the nation, for that matter. A lot of people that might be stuck in your situation that are facing rent that's maybe $1,200 to $1,500 minimum. For maybe the same thing as what you have. Those people are really hurting. So the government has this fight just to even get on disability.
Yep.
What have you gone through so far to get on disability? And what year you said you started was in 2018?
2018.
Okay. The beginning of the year and middle?
Like, when did I start?
Right. When in 2018?
I started June. So
okay.
I'm about
middle of the year. So right now we're, basically 2 years.
About 2 years now.
2 years in, and you're still waiting on a decision currently. Now, you initially applied by paper.
Yeah.
And you did that with the help of your mom or just yourself?
Both.
Okay.
Started in the second time, her.
And so the first time, how long did it take to get the response?
Probably 3 months. They dragged it out until the exact 90 days.
Sure. And then you got a response that they declined, or they denied you, correct?
Yeah, exact 90 days, instantly just declined.
Okay. And did they give you a reason?
I don't remember. I think it just said declined.
Okay. So they didn't give you examples of work that you could perform, that kind of thing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And so then obviously you had to go through an appeal process. And how many times did you appeal that?
Probably twice.
Okay. So you're denied once and you've gone through 2 appeals currently? Or are you going through the current, or is this the second appeal that you're
right now is in another appeal.
So this is the 3rd appeal?
Probably.
Okay. And this time you have an attorney, correct?
Yeah.
Is this the first appeal that you've used an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be safe to say, let me dig a little bit further. What's your level of education?
Just high school.
High school. Okay. Would you say you were a valedictorian, or were you, a D student? Were you B's, A's? Where'd you sit?
Average.
Okay. So C's, B's?
CBs.
Okay. I'm not trying to beat you up on it. The reason I'm asking is
I don't mind. It depends what the class was. Like, if I like the class, so like history, I like history. So
the reason I was trying to
math, I didn't care about math. Math, I meant.
So, did you have any learning disciplines or anything like that growing up? Were you in special ed or anything like that?
I was only in spec ed because of anger.
Okay.
So they kept me away from other students because of
were you diagnosed
with other students?
Were you diagnosed with like ADHD or anything?
No.
Okay.
They just kept me away with other students because of what they were doing. They kept me away with other students because they didn't want to deal with what the students were doing to me.
I'm sorry, I got to dig a little further. So, what were the other students doing to you?
Since the kids were making fun of me for my dad dying and my mom having cancer, they kept me away from them and said the same things to them.
Okay. So when you were young, well, since just because of our listeners, when Kameron was young, his father passed away. His mother was dealing with cancer, and at the same time lost his father. And all of this while Kameron was going to school. In addition, that obviously affected him to the point where the school put him into special ed for some behavioral help to try to get him on track and deal with the loss of his dad and the adjustments that this obviously was having on him in his life. And it also was difficult for his mom because at the same time she was battling cancer. And so not only was she trying to raise 2 kids, but she was also trying to do all of this other stuff and while dealing with the loss of a spouse. And you kind of stepped up to the plate and really helped out a lot. You were kind of the backbone for your mom a little bit, weren't you?
Somewhat, yeah.
So you have a really great heart-throbbing story that we can talk about as much or as little as you want. But the point that I was trying to make with all of that I brought up is that, again, for our listeners, the Social Security process is really complex. I myself have been diagnosed with fluid memory, but the skills that I've learned so far are okay. So that was because of I had a brain injury, spinal injury, internal nerve damage that affected a bunch of different crap. My life sucks in certain ways because of all the crap that I've had to deal with. But I had to go through that process for disability. And I was denied the first time, and then I was approved the second time. And then they didn't backdate me. They only backdated me 4 months without cause. So then I had to appeal it a third time, which they could have said no and denied me. But instead, that was vindicated, and then they had to backdate me from when I initially applied. But there's certain, they only go back 1 year before the time that you applied, so they don't actually backdate you to when you became disabled. And in my particular situation, I waited almost 2 years because I didn't know I was going to be disabled. I didn't know that I couldn't get better. I kept working to get better, and it wasn't getting better, and so then that's when I decided to finally apply myself, because I had sold all of my assets. And even though this was caused by a personal injury, in my particular situation, I had an attorney that has been now found guilty of misrepresenting me. He stole my settlement funds. All of this, there's like 5 different criminal things that he's been found guilty for. And they're currently trying to figure out what I should have got, what they're going to give me, work all this stuff out. So that's currently what's going on. But point is that I was circling the drain, and the games that the system plays to minimize the number of people that actually get on disability, and then minimize the payout without going through a bunch of extra hoops in rigmarole, is just not right. And it makes people that really need disability and the help that it provides, and the shelter and the roof over your head that it provides. And mind you, for the people listening, disability is only like $800 a month. I started out and it was only 700 and something, and now it's gone up to like 841. So no one's getting rich. No one's enjoying not being able to afford shit, and had it not been for some of the personal injury money finally being released to me, I wouldn't have been able to even buy the equipment. I've been struggling myself for, the last 4 some years. So I tell that story because it gives insight to not only you, but me, and insight to a system that is really kind of broken. And the last people to ever really see anyone think about them are disabled people. Not all of us are physically disabled. Some of us are cognitively disabled. And what if you're not cognitively able to represent yourself to even get yourself on disability? You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that just fall through the cracks, and it's really unfortunate. We're greedy people, we don't like to give, but yet we give all the time to our neighbors. We try to look like we're givers, but at the core, I think sometimes we're really selfish, and we need to get our priorities straight as a country and as a people, and stop having these things that are contrary to one another and always seem to create conflict, because it doesn't, the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many, and that isn't right? So anyways, enough of my podium speech. Now that you've been waiting for almost 2 years, you finally got an attorney, and you have been fighting now for this last appeal. How many months, and how long before you're owed a decision?
It'll probably be another, what's the date today? The 3rd.
Yeah.
So I got 10 days to that.
Actually, it's the 4th.
Probably another 90 days.
Today.
So 9 days till then. And then probably another 90 days. But they're going to drag it out. They got all the time they need.
Well, so do you know that one thing?
Which, they might do it instantly, because once the judge actually sees it, he could do it instantly. Depends how the judge is.
So let me tell you one thing that my attorney did for me. My attorney ended up going to the Senate, or our state, like Tammy Baldwin's office was involved, to actually get them to expedite it, because when you're in need.
Some judges do that. I mean, no, some lawyers do that. They can do an express.
Right. And your attorney's not.
And I might talk to my attorney and say, hey, I need
what it took for me to do is I had to write a letter to Tammy Baldwin's office. And then Tammy Baldwin's office responded to me and opened an inquiry to try to get this expedited. And because you've been going through this for as long as you have, because you literally just had this super major surgery where they put a lead from your neck into your brain, and it wasn't like some little superficial wound when your neck swelled up. Like, dude.
That was bad.
Oh my God. I could not believe how much. I couldn't believe how much it swelled. I wish I had something that I could equate it to that I saw in a movie, but it was beyond that.
Second surgery, the doctor expected the surgery to be 20 minutes, and it ended up being an hour and a half because of all the scar tissue.
Why don't you explain that? How did, first of all, were they successful? Did you have any complications? How was your healing?
It went fine.
All right. So your experiences with the hospital and doctors were good.
Well, yeah, because the first surgery, it went fine, he said, which it did. But since he messed with the nerve, obviously, it caused a lot of irritation. And my neck blew up when I woke up the next morning. I couldn't talk, which that was supposed to be a side effect. But then, no, I couldn't swallow.
Folks, when he says his neck blew up,
it looked like
OMG.
Football.
It looked like your thigh. Yeah, it looked like your neck turned into the size of your thigh. And
I didn't talk.
He's
for
a
like
husky
4
boy.
days. I didn't eat.
He's not skinny. But he's not like fat. You're husky.
I am not fat. I'm about average for someone that's 5'8".
All right,
5'9". I am.
Do you have a six-pack?
I'm average. I'm not
Or do you have a
I'm average. Okay. I'm not in fit, but I'm average.
Girls, he's a good-looking guy.
Wisconsin drinker.
Yes, he's an average Wisconsinite. It's a little
the average Wisconsin Packer fan.
A little husky. But anyways, girls, he's very cute. Don't worry.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry.
But yeah, that it was huge. And then but since I had my neck down the entire time, the way it healed built so much scar tissue that finally when the swelling went down, I could barely move my neck. So I went back, and he was like, "Oh yeah,
now
you probably got scar tissue."
How have you made it this far? Okay, so you haven't gotten any money from the state. You are how old right now?
21.
21. You haven't worked since how long?
Well, I've worked here and there, but it's been like I got fired from that one job because I crashed the car into a tree from a seizure.
Okay. Not asking it like that. I'm just saying in terms of income, how long has it been since you had a paycheck?
Well, obviously my family.
How long has it been since you had a paycheck?
Oh, it's like a couple weeks before Thanksgiving.
Okay. So, in other words, folks, he's not had any money for basically 6 months. He's had a major surgery where literally, even if he was working, he would not have been able to work for at least how long?
I wouldn't have been able to work for a month plus. Well, I wouldn't have been able to work for a month, but then I had that seizure, and then I would have been able to work for 2 months because of the popped out shoulder, and then I would have had to do physical therapy.
So the difficulties that I'm trying to show is that the struggle for disability, while a patient, a human, you, me, any one of us that are listening to this, because guys, each one of our situations was caused by an accident, can change your life in a minute. And if we don't have things in place where we have protections for short term, that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to roll into long term, but there should be some kind of umbrella, because across the board, we leave these open ends for people to fall into, these cracks in the system. And the overall cost to us as a society to take care of what happens due to the domino effect of what happens when this person's in the crack cost us as a society much more than it would if we just had some kind of safeguard in place for people in this time of need, enough to pay your rent. Obviously, on disability, you're getting $800 a month. I know rent for me is $600. I have to apply for renter's assistance. Fortunately, I just got that little bit of fucking money from the settlement. I'm still waiting on all the other shit, but I struggled. And if we can't have a safeguard, then we end up selling all of our stuff. Well, what if you don't have stuff to sell? What if you can't afford to keep a roof over your head, which means that you lose all your shit anyways because it's all on the curb because you can't afford to spend it for a storage, right? Maybe you have something valuable enough to bring it to a pawn shop, depends on how you're living. So anyways, a lot of preaching I just did there for like the last 10 minutes, but it's one of those topics that I was trying to narrow into you and your life because you have gone through this struggle and you're from a good family, and thank God for your family network. But not all of us have moms, or not all of us have brothers and sisters. Some of us are just alone, and so we can't always say, well, the family is going to be there for them, if they go through something. For some of us, yeah, but there's still going to be a percentage that, fall through the cracks. So how has this been for your family? Has it been tough on them trying to help you to keep you afloat during this time? That's usually the other thing I think about.
Yeah.
How's that working? I know your mom also is in a bad spot, right? Because she broke her ankle. So she's been off of work for, she had like 3 pins and 8 screws and not healing all that great. Obviously a cancer survivor. She had osteoporosis. So healing with osteoporosis, which is caused, by the way, by cancer, treatments. Yeah. The
radiation.
Mm-hmm. So it's,
obviously she doesn't exactly have the money to give me, but obviously she's not going to just let me get kicked out.
Well, yeah. So how do you guys do it? So, mom is on a fixed income, right?
Yeah.
And then what little bit that she's living off of is she's trying to help you. And I mean, it's got to be heck for everyone involved, so it puts a lot of stress on the family, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And it sounds like that's happened in your family's case. So, hopefully once you get approved for SSI, which, by the way, having your conditions qualifies you for, and not only that, but SSI or disability doesn't have to be lifelong. In my case, what if I got this podcast off the ground, right? All of a sudden I'm making money and I'm productive and I'm helping people. Like, that'd be good. Who knows? There's a small percentage that actually happens to. But if not, at least I'm trying to be productive in some way and doing what we can while we can, But some people, find that they're able to do some things after they get things underneath control. Epilepsy is one of those things, especially with that lead that they put in your neck. Potentially, you might have gotten well enough where you could work, at least part-time or more, right?
Yeah, of course.
So the disability aspect of it is just to get you through, because you're going through all this stuff and you can't maintain a job until you get it under control, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's because all of a sudden you have a seizure and now your shoulder's popped out. What are you going to do?
Right.
Not pay rent and get kicked out?
Right. Well, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that you're in a position where you're not able to hold a job, and it's pretty easy to prove.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what happens.
Right. pretty easy to prove medically, where you can say to the doctor or the government, look, this is what's going on.
Well, my doctor is the one that said, hey, you need to get on it.
Right. Well, and then that's an even bigger question of why did you get denied 3 times already? Same thing.
He was the one that told me to start applying because I'm like 10 grand in debt because I show up at the hospital every month from when I leave work because they send me to the hospital. Because no matter what, if you're at work,
so you get
sent to the hospital.
You're not on Obamacare?
Well, I'm on insurance now because I'm not working.
Okay.
But if you work, you're not on insurance.
Right. Well, that's a great point that you just brought up. It's those loopholes where, I know someone that maxed out, I think, on their unemployment by $30. So then they had to pay for their full health insurance, which was like $150 a month rather than a copay of $30. Only because
the ambulance ride to Grand Hospital was like $1,500 or a grand, depending on what happens. If I need stitches, even more. Yeah,
and that, how do you even get out of the hole? When you have that happen to you. And that takes.
So I just start throwing out the bills that I keep getting. If I see the hospital name on it, I just chuck it.
I would assume that affects your mental health too, right? Do you ever?
A little bit.
Do you ever feel like lost, like you're stuck in this hole? Like, how am I going to get out of this, and how am I going to get on with my future?
A little bit, but I'm young, so you hope that eventually one day you figure it out.
True. I think I love the cup half full mentality, but I got to tell you, buddy, dealing with it since you were as young as you've been for as long as you've been. Yeah, I know, that's the issue. I'm kind of a realist at heart. I'd be like, all right.
Oh yeah, I know. That's how I am too. But
yeah, but I bring me with where life takes me.
The way I look at it is, I'll just file for bankruptcy. I'm just waiting for the hospital. Still hasn't sent it to collection. I can't believe they still haven't sent it to a collection agency.
I just know a lot of people
they've been sending me that for a year.
It puts us, when we don't have a safeguard like this for us as a people in America in place, it makes people desperate. And I think it also puts people in a position where when you're desperate, you do desperate things, right? Some people may sell drugs. Some people might prostitute. Some people might steal. Whatever your story is, you do that because typically you're in a desperate situation. And so not having these important short-term safeguards in place, I think personally that we should have some kind of short-term disability that kicks in, within a relatively short period of time if you qualify with X, Y, and Z. And obviously the approval of your doctors or whatever. And that at least would mitigate a large portion of these people that are put in these desperate situations. Because then it gives them an opportunity to file for SSI or some other kind of disability if they need it, and for them to figure it out rather than having that person sink and lose their home and become homeless or move in with the rest of their family and become desperate, putting strain on everyone, because we don't have those in place. So I don't know. I like having these talks, and especially I get long-winded. But I think there's some lessons to learn, especially within the stories that you've shared with us thus far. It's interesting also seeing a perspective of a 21-year-old when you're 46. So times change, ideas change. Seeing it out of your, through your eyes, gives us insight to where we are, for people your age. Is there anything that you want to say? Anything you want to address? Anything you want to talk about?
Not really.
Not
I mean,
really.
that pretty much covered all that.
Yeah. Well, I wish you well. I know that the process of SSI, especially with the delay of the coronavirus, is just another headache that you're having to deal with. Just so that I can fill up a little bit more time, make this an actual episode, I'll tell you a little bit about what happened to me when I was in St. Thomas. So, when I had my accident, I had finished my certification at the diving school and was going on my first wreck dive at St. John. And I was wearing flip-flops, and they had these stairs that we had a site inspection. So they were sloped forward with a really rounded edge and no traction. And there was like a gloss seal with no sand in it. So it was just really slippery. And they had an overhang, and the landscape funneled the water from the rains down these stairs. And they would stay perpetually wet because there was an overhang that always shaded them in sun. So when I went and took my first or second step down these stairs, my foot slipped forward and I fell backwards, and then rode with the end plates of my spine from my coccyx all the way up to my neck. And I ended up getting knocked out for like over 20 minutes. Got rushed to the hospital in St. Thomas in an ambulance. That was a poor experience in itself because the neck brace that I was in, one side wasn't even with the other, so it was almost dislocating my jaw. It was altogether a really horrible experience. And then when I got to the hospital, it was supposedly like a third world hospital kind of thing, where they didn't have specialists, spine specialists there to treat my injuries and that kind of thing, because it's just a little island, and they wanted to medevac me off the island. And so I went through all this stuff as a result of my own injuries. And you would have thought that when I applied for SSI, I had the medical documents galore to uphold my case. Well, the first time I didn't, and that was because the actual software that populates the medical record literally wasn't populating it correctly. There was an error within the software. So it would list it, like it would say that I had my appendix removed when really I had a colonoscopy or something like that, right? With normal findings. So it just didn't match the body of the medical record in these what are called indexes of a problem list and overview. And that's what hospitals and doctors and state representatives and the people that are at SSI look at to get an idea of what your medical record is. And if you have errors with the software, which happened in my case to the tune of like almost 40 different errors. I had 4 surgeries listed that I never had, gave me a chronic history that I never had, affected my personal injury case. So there's all these things that we have to work on in our system to get it to run smoother. But one thing that I am certain of is that if we had some kind of short-term disability that is equal to $700 or $800 a month or whatever ridiculous minimum amount that you can get by on is, which, I mean, if I'm having to get on $840 a month, then I expect that it's $840 or less, right? But at least that keeps the roof over your head, right? Would that have really helped you and your family going through this?
Oh, it'd be plenty because I could pay all my bills.
And if that happened, how long do you think, what's a reasonable amount of time? You know, I mean, obviously you've only been out of work for 6 months, you know, but you had a major surgery, you had things that really stand out as being qualifying for short-term help, right?
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, when we're all pitching in on our taxes and and we're all contributing to I think when it's all said and done, over 80% of what we make goes out in taxes of some form, and when you think about that number, that's flipping ridiculous, and those taxes are supposed to put safeguards and keep us safe, maintain the roads, offer SSI disability, offer short-term disability.
Social Security is not going to be here in the future.
Yeah. We got to fix that. Otherwise, we're going to be in really big trouble. We have these huge swaths we have these huge swaths of homeless people in all these major cities. Literally.
If you go back and look, I don't know if you saw. I don't care who wins as president. That's not the point. I'm not going for either side. But if you go back and look, Joe Biden is seen in a video screaming that he was trying to get rid of Social Security and a bunch of other things. So it's funny how both sides go against everything. Yet nowadays, I didn't say nothing.
Well, it's because it's all about big money, right? It's the corporations.
It's just all puppets. It's all puppets.
Yeah, and I agree with that too.
That's how it is.
The thing about, I think of an ant colony, right? You always have the queen, right? And then you have the soldiers. You have the important class within the ant colony. Then you have all the freaking pawns, right? And there's always a zillion pawns compared to the upper elite. But if those little pawns ever turned on the elite, maybe they wouldn't hold up well, but the sheer number of them would overwhelm them, right? I think they had that in A Bug's Life. It was one of those freaking little Pixar movies. Got it stuck in my head, but it's so true, and I've heard that time and time and time again. And history has shown that too. That's why we have revolutions, right? We have enough people that get sick of it and they say, screw this. They band together, and the next thing you know, there's a revolution.
I just think it's funny when you see like Hillary Clinton a few years ago, they had a video of her. It was something about Hillary. Like, she said something. There was something about, I don't remember what it was. It was just something about gay rights or something. And then she said, I changed my view on it. Sorry to say, but you don't just change your views all of a sudden. Just because you're running for president, you just didn't change your views like that.
It's the thing about generations, right? There's generational
that's exactly
ideas.
Where I'm going with. I told that's what I was telling my friends the other day. I was like, I'm sorry, but you guys keep voting these people in. They're how old? You guys need to change what you're voting for. You need to change. You need to vote for people that are younger.
Right.
You keep voting these people in there, 70, 80 years old. They grew up in a generation that were against all these things you keep trying to change. You got to vote for younger generations that are for these things.
Did you know that the earliest let me ask it in this way.
I think it's like 35 or 40, isn't
Bingo.
it? Bingo.
It's 35. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yep. And JFK Jr. was one of the youngest. Obama was pretty young too.
He was 40, I think.
Yeah. So, we'd have to do a Google search, but
JFK, he wasn't even the youngest. I think it was, I don't know. It wasn't JFK. JFK was not the youngest president. It was someone else. I thought it was JFK, but not him. Obama wasn't the youngest.
No, but they're definitely getting down there, especially if Obama was 40.
Was. And Obama wasn't even the youngest.
So, I don't know. I don't affiliate to a party. I don't designate myself to a party.
Neither do I.
I really... You tear apart any president.
So, yeah, that's pretty much how it is. It's a generation thing. You guys keep... not you guys, but like, just people keep voting in these people that are 70 and 80 years... Well, not 80, but 70, almost to 80-year-old people. Right. It's like, you do realize these people grew up in a generation that were against these people just because they said, "Well, I changed my view." No, I'm sorry to tell you, but they didn't.
Well, when you get into that
They're
generation, you still have the
vote.
fascists left over from World War II. I mean,
we're saying it for the vote.
We're looking 1950s, right? So the people that are 70 years old were born in 1950. If you're 80 years old, you're born in the 40s. World War II got over in the early 40s. But during that time, I remember my grandparents, when they were alive, were always like, oh, those squinty-eyed Japs. They were prejudiced because of World War II, right, with Pearl Harbor.
Exactly.
And each generation, like you're saying, has certain ideas that they learned within their own generation that some of them aren't all that great, and when we hold on to these old people, as you said, that when we're electing people that are 70 and 80 years old, one thing I've heard a lot about for Trump is dementia and how it looks like he has the symptoms of dementia. Whether that's true or not, I don't think he acts like a person that I would want to represent me, which is why I have such a large issue with Trump. And some people say, well, look what he's doing for the American people. Well, for as much as I try to find out what he's done, I see all the other stuff that he's done, right? If getting,
I just don't think anybody that's been running it is anyone good.
No, well, you take a look at the environmental stuff that he's done away with, and you take a look at some of the loopholes that he's opened up for these oil companies and other big corporations. It's hard to say, oh, I'm proud of that, pulling out of the Kyoto and at least even acknowledging that climate change exists and that we need to put a kibosh on our polluting ways. You take a look at the oceans and the acidity levels and the plastic, and you take a look at climate change. There's definite science behind what we're putting into our atmosphere. We can't just put that shit out there and expect that it just disappears. It's like the ocean's 75% of the world. It takes a long time to pollute that motherfucker to the point where you have islands of garbage floating around. But guess what? There's islands of fucking garbage floating around, right? Literally, it's a fucked up place that we live in. I even notice in my own lifespan the amount of birds and wildlife that has visibly diminished. You still see some things, but I don't see the birds that I've seen when in my youth. We don't get near the amount of birds that we used to. We don't get nearly the amount of wildlife that we used to because we keep hitting it with a fucking car, or we create new neighborhoods that deprive them of their habitat. We don't give a shit about environmental protection. So some of these areas that they breed in or they need to sustain their population as a wild species, we ruin, which then it's all part of a web fucking chain, right? So it gets frustrating. The big things, the big questions that we need to answer are always the last ones to really get on our plate and actually have us solve as we grow as a people. And I mean, we're always going to be here and continue to live and die. So each new generation is either going to get worse, and our environment and the place that they're going to live in is going to get worse, or we really got to fucking get a handle on shit and start making an improvement so that our quality of life as a people doesn't get to the point where it's apocalyptic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're at that hour point. I think I nailed all the topics I wanted to hit. We had a good podcast. Anything that you want to say? Any thoughts that you had during this? Anything that opened your eyes up? Was this dumb? you think this was cool? What are your thoughts on spending the last hour with me?
No, it was good.
Cool, man. Well, you know, it's all about talking. It's all about sharing what's on our hearts and our minds. And that's the whole reason for this fucking digital voices shit. So I'm glad that you were able to be a part of this with me tonight. So with that, here's my outro, and thank you, and I will talk to you later, brother. I would like to thank Mr. Kameron Shembeda for spending the last hour with me, talking about what's on his heart, what's on his mind, talking about struggles of fucking life, figuring out that it's not a competition, it's a journey. And yes, we're talking about life. And the easier we can do this together, the more we can support one another, the more we give a fuck, the better off we're going to be. The big issues matter. The big issues matter. Not what fucking color it is, not what time, this is that. There's so many trivial things that we focus on these days. Actually, focusing on the big fucking issues and stop wasting time with all this other bullshit. We shouldn't have to jump through all these hurdles.